Welcome to this month's Golf Away Tours Webcast, and we have the pleasure of speaking with a great Canadian voice in golf, and that's Jason Logan, of the editor of SCOREGolf Magazine. Jason, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, TJ.
First off, I want to always start off by giving our listeners a bit of information about who you are and how you got involved in the industry. So tell us a little bit about where you came from and how you got to be the editor of golf for the last, 8 years?
Yeah, it's a bit of a long story, but so I grew up in a tiny town village called Blackstock, Ontario, which is north of Oshawa. Some people might know Port Perry area is where I went to high school and played all my hockey and golf and fastball and whatnot. But I went to Carleton University for journalism school. I'd always wanted to pursue journalism in some way, shape, or form, probably since I was like in the fifth or sixth grade. Writing was just always something that I took to and loved doing. Um, kind of had grand visions of maybe being like a Leafs reporter or something like that, or a Blue Jays reporter. But I graduated in 2001, and it was kind of tough to get a job when I really started getting serious about trying to find a journalism job, because after kind of spending a summer up there just working in the bar industry, which I did while I was in school, and starting to get serious about job hunting in the fall, 9/11 happened, and then it kind of got tough to find stuff. And so I actually spent like a year and a half out of school before I got the job at Score. And what happened was I was very familiar with Score Golf. It was always in our house growing up. My dad would always bring it home from the courses, and I knew who Bob was. And at the time, the website was just kind of getting going, and I would read the website. And so I just sent him an email kind of out of the blue and just said, I've been a golfer my whole life. I have a journalism degree. I'm raring to do anything, to get into the journalism industry. And eventually he got back to me and he said, like, why don't you just come in for a chat? Which was, at the time I was like a 22-year-old kid. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, can't believe Bob Weeks is, inviting me into the office just to chat. Right. And kind of as it turns out, what I found out later is that they were looking for somebody, or they had started to think about hiring somebody. And at the time he said, I don't really have a job, but come on in and chat. Maybe I can steer you in the right direction. And then, we had a great chat, and a month later he called me again. He's like, we actually do have a job for an associate editor if you'd like to come in and interview for the position. And I was like, yeah, like I'll be there tomorrow. Right. And like I said, like I found out later that they did need somebody. Bob was starting to be like on the road all the time with TSN and with the Score Golf TV show. Pete Robinson, who was there at the time, who's a managing editor, had started to take on Prospects Hockey Magazine, which falls under our parent company as well. So they needed somebody, and they're thinking about like hiring a senior person or whatever, or just hiring somebody on contract. And then my email just arrived serendipitously, and so he gave me the job. And I just remember him saying, assistant editor, you can do some travel, you can cover some tournaments. And like, I honestly, TJ, like I never ever thought I would be a golf writer. Like it wasn't something I aspired to do, even though I started playing golf when I was like 6 years old. So it was just like icing on the cake for it to be a golf journalism job. But I was more elated just to get a journalism job, right? Yeah. To put my degree to use, to show my parents that I didn't waste 4 years up in Ottawa. Just to get a job and being paid money, although it wasn't a lot of money at the time, just to write stories. And that was 2003, and turned out to be a great year for golf. I mean, Mike Weir won the Masters and a couple other tournaments. And I remember Dave Barr won on the Champions Tour, and David Moreland won on the Nationwide. And Marlene Street won the U.S. Senior Women's Am that fall when she was 69 years old. I'm like, this is amazing, right? Like, I didn't know that there would be some fallow patches for Canadian professional golf, because my first year was so great. And then, I've been there ever since, and just, I worked my way up to managing editor when Peter had to focus solely on hockey. And then 2012, Bob made me the editor. He was still there. He became the editorial director, and then he left Score to go to TSN full time in 2015, and so then I've been in charge of content since then.
Fantastic, and obviously you followed some great editors, and there've only been 4 in the history of the magazine, right? It started with Lauren Rubenstein, John Gordon, and then Bob Weeks and yourself. So pretty heady names to be mentioned with, for sure, in the world of golf.
Yeah, there's actually a 5th. It was a woman named Lisa Layton, whom I don't know, and we actually tried to track her down for the 40th anniversary issue, which we'll chat about, to get her involved, but we just couldn't track her down. But um, she actually followed Lauren, but I think Lauren was still controlling the editorial direction of the magazine. He just, he left to do his own thing and to kind of be his own writer and start doing stuff in the Globe and Mail. But he really did a lot of, if you look back at like the magazines from like 83 to 87 before John Gordon come in, like all of the features were written by Lauren, and she was there, overseeing the operation. So, but yeah, I mean, to obviously come in and follow those guys, and just to be at a publication that's 40 years old now, which there's not too many magazines in Canada that are 40 years old, and for us to still be going, I think is an accomplishment, and obviously a testament to everybody that's been involved over 4+ decades.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a good segue into what I wanted to chat next, and that is the 40th anniversary. And obviously, you guys celebrated this year and had some special issues. And tell us a little bit about the celebration this year, what you guys have done, and what the future holds for the magazine.
Yeah, so our publisher, Kim Locke, who didn't start SCOREGolf, but was there in the early days and took over it very early on. The magazine started as the Canadian Open program in 1980, and then in 1981 started publishing a national golf magazine. So 2020 marked obviously 40 years since 1980, but also 40 publishing seasons since we had started producing magazines in 1981. So, we had been talking about it for months leading up to 2020. And the one thing I really wanted to do was I wanted to bring back all the previous editors. And Bob and Lauren have continued to write a column. I mean, Lauren's written the back page column forever. And even when Bob left to go over TSN, we made sure that he was still writing a column for the magazine, because obviously everybody knows who he is and it's valuable content. But I wanted those guys to be more involved, and I wanted John Gordon to come back because he had had a great stretch at the magazine. And, obviously he's a well-known golf journalist in this country. And, we went to lunch one day, and the four of us, and it was a neat experience to sit with those three guys. Not that I didn't know them, but just all of us to be together and start talking about ideas. And, came out with that 40th issue a little bit later than we would have wanted, because it was originally planned to come out about the end of March. And then obviously the world changed and we had to put it on hold for a little while because golf courses weren't permitted to open. And that's our cheap distribution point. And obviously there was some advertising that budgets that were put on hold when COVID first struck, and those eventually loosened up and the magazine was successful. But we did, the 40 most significant moments over the last 40 years in Canadian golf. Rick Young did 40 years of innovation, where he picked 40 products that he thought were the most significant, whether that be golf clubs or training aids or, the advent of Golf Channel or things like that, the most important industry news. Had Bob do a feature on Mike Weir, who is obviously the guy that we've featured in the magazine the most, just given, his prime years were in the, 90s and 2000s. And Bob did a great job about not necessarily telling the story of Mike Weir as a PGA Tour winner, but the story of Mike Weir growing up in Brights Grove, Ontario, and, just playing all these mini tours and scraping and clawing his way to the PGA Tour and then becoming a superstar. We had Lauren get in touch with Tom Watson to do a Q&A because Tom Watson was the very first cover subject, the very first magazine that was produced in 1981. Lauren had actually flown down to Kansas City that year to chat with Tom and did a Q&A. And so I called Lauren. I said, try and get in touch with Tom Watson again and just pick up where you left off. So we did that. And then we did a bunch of other things as well, just to celebrate it. And I mean, it turned out to be a really enjoyable experience. I think a lot of people liked it. It certainly would have been nice if it came out in March like we had planned, but I was proud of our team for getting it out eventually and getting it into the hands of readers.
Obviously that was a great issue, but often the most popular issues that come out are the ones that rank golf courses. And that's one thing we want to get into a little bit, because it's what people want to talk about, right? Because, and I have the great pleasure of being on the ranking panel and really enjoy contributing to those issues. And so tell us a little bit about what that process is like for you in terms of what you like the most about pulling all that together. What's your most frustration? What you really like about putting that issue together.
Well, obviously, I like the discussion that it generates. Whether it's positive or negative reactions. I'm not too. I mean, I have no problems with people who look at the list and think it's crazy that this course is ahead of that course, and whatever. That's what it's all about. And everybody has a personal opinion. And when you put 100 opinions together, this is what it spits out. So I obviously love the discussion it generates. I love when I first get the results, because I'm like everybody else. I obviously see the results 5-6 weeks ahead of everybody else. But when I get that email from my web administrator, when I said, okay, I'm ready for the results, and everything, as you know, is done online, he just says, okay, I'll go in and I'll calculate all the results for you, and I'll spit it out, and here it is. And when I first open that email, I'm excited to see, what's at the top, and maybe what's cracked the top 10, or if there's any shuffling around. And so I'm just like everybody else, that I like to see the list. The most frustrating thing is, by far, I would say, is the accusation, I guess is the word to use, that the ranking is basically dictated by advertising dollars, which is just drives me up the wall, because it's just, you have to take my word for it. There's just nothing that can be further from the truth. I mean, we don't even have that many golf courses advertised in the magazine. There certainly aren't 100 of them. There certainly aren't a lot of private clubs advertised in the magazine. It's just doesn't work that way. And I know people want to believe that. It's just not. The sales guys don't even see the list until the magazine comes out. Like, they just have no idea. I mean, obviously there's courses that appear on the top 100 every single year. So they might be calling them and saying, hey, a top 100 issue is coming out. And you usually do fairly well on these things. But there has never, ever been a time where the publisher has come to me and said, you've got to include this course on the list because they bought an ad. He would never even dare to do it, because he knows what my reaction would be. So that I find frustrating. There's a lot of people, I think, from the West Coast that accuse the list of being Ontario and Toronto bias. I can understand why they get that upset. Frankly, there's just a lot more courses in Ontario than there is out there, so that the mathematics just dictate that's the way it is. But I can live with all those criticisms, and being proud of the courses in your area and being a homer, like, that's fine. I love that stuff. I just don't like when the whole advertising thing comes into it, because it's so false. So false.
And it is great to look at the list. I always love it. I always love discussing it with my golf buddies, and we have some great discussions, and obviously disagree on a lot of things, and because nobody's going to agree on everything. And I like the list, and even though I'm part of the panel, I certainly don't agree with where some courses fall. And
nor do I.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you that. So which courses kind of generally are lower than what you'd put them, or higher than what you'd put them? Maybe you shouldn't say the higher if you don't want to, but ones that maybe you don't feel are in the right spot in your mind, because everybody has their own opinion.
Well, I will say the ones that are higher than I think they should be, because I've done so on other people's podcasts, so I don't want to cheat you out of my honest opinion. I mean, I've never been a huge fan of Glencoe, the Forest course at Glencoe. Like, that's one I just don't get. And I hope the same people that listen to other podcasts don't necessarily listen to this one, because they're just going to think I'm harping on Glencoe. It's a great club. And I think that's the other misconception with the top 100, is that we're not rating golf clubs. We're rating golf courses. And there's a very big difference between the two. I mean, a golf club encompasses everything. It encompasses the practice facilities, the clubhouse, the service, all of that stuff, the atmosphere. Like, we don't do that. Some other rankings do. That's not what we do. As you know, there's no categories on there for any of that stuff. It's quite simply a ranking from the first tee to the 18th green. Like, what do you experience in between first tee deck and the 18th green? And, something like a Glencoe is a fantastic club, has everything you'd want in a club. I just don't think the Forest course there is particularly good piece of golf course architecture. I sort of feel the same way about Royal Montreal's Blue Course. Again, historic club, I mean, amazing place. The Blue Course just doesn't wow me like some other courses do. So those are kind of two that I generally pick on, to be honest with you. As for ones that are too high, like you and I have talked, I like Scarborough a lot. I always think it's get overlooked. I think there's a kind of, I think when some people look at the list and say there's a Toronto bias, I think the Toronto bias works against some clubs in Toronto, because something like Scarborough, which is a great golf course, is going to get compared to St. George's because they're so close in proximity relative to the country. And if somebody says, well, St. George's, I think, is a lot better than Scarborough, and I have St. George's here, that means I got to put Scarborough here. And then all of a sudden Scarborough finds itself a little too far down the list for my liking. There's some courses that should be on the list that aren't. I think Talking Rock in interior British Columbia is a terrific golf course that just frankly doesn't get seen enough. And those who have seen it don't rank it as highly as I would. I'm sure there's some others that I think some of the Whistler courses are maybe a little bit too high from what I've heard. But I mean, overall, I think it's pretty solid. And I think, it's hard to get in a fuss if something is 75 and you think it should be like 55. I mean, like, because if you look at the list, the points, 55 to 75 is a big spread within 100. But the actual scores between those courses are very, very, very close. We're talking decimal points, really.
Yeah, and that's what makes it. That's why courses can move so much from year to year. Really, not that there's a ton of huge movement, but there could be a course every once in a while that jumps 20 or 30 spots, and people wonder why. And it is just because they're so close, right? And so if you get a few people giving you a favorable rating one year, then they can move, and that's just how the points work out. But you and I had the opportunity to play golf this summer, which was awesome at one of your courses on your list. The first time, which was is about time.
Yeah.
And it was a course I got a chance to play a couple times this summer, and I love as well. And it's on your list. I think it was 43 this year. It's Cherry Hill Club down in Fort Erie, and one that not a lot of people see. It's a course that has a lot of American members and was very quiet this year as a result. It's on a very flat property. Not a very dramatic property, but man, the greens there are unbelievable. And I love that it's rated that high. And some people might think it's too high, but I think it's just an awesome golf course, and we had a great day out there.
Yeah. It's fantastic. I mean, especially to me, the first probably 11 holes, like you said, the green complexes are so good. I mean, like a course like that, it provides you so many options around the green, where if you miss the green, it's not like automatic, whatever your favorite around the green club is. Like you could do so many things around the green. I mean, you might pitch it, you might flop it, you might putt it, you might bump and run it. Like every different hole, there's so many different scenarios, and you could play an array of shots. The bunkering is terrific. The bunkers are perfectly positioned as well. They're just right there where you're like, I got to think about this bunker. And so many of the holes, like the bunkers are right in my wheelhouse from the tee decks that we played. But yeah, I think it's a great club, and it's I'm always happy when I see a course that I'm worried is going to get overlooked because of its location, get the credit it deserves. And that's a tough part of putting together the top 100 golf courses in a country as vast as Canada is, and as difficult to travel as Canada is. I mean, we don't have a lot of big cities, right? So it's a tough country to get around. And when you see something like a Cherry Hill get the credit it deserves, that's great. Conversely, like I said before, Talking Rock is in a remote location. It probably doesn't get the attention it deserves, and that's something we'll try and fix in the future.
Yeah, that's great. Now, I keep telling people when I travel around the world that Canada has incredible golf, and not just telling Canadians that, but telling people that I get to meet in my travels from around the world, because Canada just doesn't get considered a top golfing country in the world, even though we really are. And, when you think of the variety of golf from now Cabot, obviously, to the Muskokas type golf, to mountain golf out west, and prairie golf, there's just such, and then the private courses in and around Toronto, there's such a great variety of golf in Canada that we're spoiled. We really are spoiled. Now that, given the pandemic and the lack of sort of international travel recently, we're focusing more on people staying domestically next year. And Part of the reason we're chatting with you, because we want to give people a little bit more of an idea of Canadian golf. But what's if you were considering a domestic golf trip, when I say domestic Canadian golf trip, what areas, do you fancy? What areas like really attract your attention, and would you want to take a bunch of buddies to?
Well, let me just say first that I think what Cabot has done for the reputation of golf in Canada is tremendous, because, as you said, it's probably been overlooked for a long time, the golf in Canada. But I think Cabot has put a lot of attention on the country as a whole. I mean, obviously, it's put a lot of attention on Cape Breton. But I feel like for the first time, people around the world are talking about Canadian golf, largely because of Cabot. I mean, both the product is excellent and they've done a wonderful job marketing the golf course. Now, having said that, it wouldn't be the first place I would take buddies, and it would be a close second. But the top of my list has always been the Banff and Jasper duo. And it's expensive. Let me say that. There's no question about that. It's expensive to play golf there. Certainly expensive to stay at those resorts. Obviously, there's other places to stay, but I am really in my happy place, particularly at Fairmont Jasper Park. I just absolutely love that golf course. I love the setting. I love the mix of challenging holes and breather holes at Jasper. I've never had a bad day there. It's just, there's something about the mountains for me that just really puts me at peace. And to do the double, to make that drive from, especially if you do it going south from Jasper over to Banff, I mean, it's the best drive in the country, I think. And so that would be the first one. And then there's other courses you can play around there. I mean, obviously, if you're going from Jasper to Banff, and then maybe you're going to fly to Calgary, well, then you got to hit Kananaskis and you got to hit Stewart Creek, because those are wonderful courses too. And what a story Kananaskis has penned over the last few years. And then obviously Cape Breton. I mean, it's hard to get better than Cabot for the product, with the two courses and now the short course there that it offers. I mean, it's pure golf. It's unlike anything else in the country. When you go to Cabot Links, if you do, please find time to visit Cape Breton Highlands Links. Stop at Le Portage between the two, because I think that's an overlooked golf course. That's tons of fun. I mean, that's the type of course where you can go to Cabot and you can play with the caddy and you can walk and you can play golf as it was meant to be. But then maybe you go up to Shetty Camp, 45 minutes to an hour up the road, and be like, I'm going to have 4 or 5 beers and get in a cart and just go around and feel like I'm just kind of relaxed here. You know what I mean? But it's a very, very good golf course. It is. And then, I mean, Cape Breton Highlands Links is probably the most unique course in the country. Stanley Thompson maybe at his best. It's not always in perfect condition, but I mean, you're not going to find a routing like that anywhere. You're not going to find an experience like that everywhere, with a variety of holes that it offers, the different climates within the 18 holes that it offers. That's an awesome spot. So, I mean, I haven't really gone out on a limb with Cape Breton and the Alberta Rockies, but I mean, I think there's a reason that they're viewed as the top 2 destinations in Canada, both on our golf course rankings and then by most who visited there.
Yeah, absolutely. So you haven't had a chance to travel and play every golf course in the country, who has, but you've obviously played quite a few, but there are still some, I assume, that are still on your bucket list. So yeah, what's next on your bucket list for Canadian golf?
I'd really like to play more courses in the interior of BC. There's some really obviously good ones that I'm missing. I've never played Grey Wolf. I've not been to Predator Ridge. Sagebrush, which has obviously been closed for a number of years, but there is certainly a movement to get it going again, and I think it will be going again. That's one I've heard so many good things about that I'd like to see. I'd also like to explore golf around Edmonton a little bit more. I feel that's an overlooked city from what I've heard. And then if you look at, things like the Top 100, and you see not far from Edmonton, a place like Blackhawk, which is supposed to be incredible. And, to see like Wolf Creek, the first courses that Rod Whitman did would be cool. And then even within Edmonton themselves, there's a lot of private clubs that I'd like to see as well that people talk a lot about. Windermere, Edmonton Country Club, Glendale, places like that I'd like to see. So I've always kind of had it in the back of my mind to make a trip to Edmonton to knock off some courses out there. I mean, there's a lot of places. I've never played golf in Prince Edward Island. I've been there as a kid on family vacation, but I've never played golf there, believe it or not. So obviously I would love to go there as well.
So you got a few trips you gotta start planning, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
As
Kids got to get older first, right?
Yeah,
Kids got to get older first.
Get them to go with you.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, and I appreciate this, Jason. Again, it just goes to show, what we've talked about, how good Canadian golf is. And I think I looked recently at Golf Digest's list of international courses, because they now break it down as top 100 US and the top 100 rest of the world. And I think there were 8 or 9 Canadian golf courses in their top 100 rest of the world list, and a lot of them we've talked about in this chat. Not even private courses, right? Some of the good public courses like Banff, Jasper, and Highlands Links. It's just, we are really spoiled for choice, and I'm really proud to promote our Canadian golf and hopefully get more people traveling around the country next year. But anyway, I really thank you for doing this. We're really excited to see what SCORE has coming up. I know lots of changes going on there with digital and other things you guys are doing in addition to the print issues. So good luck with that, and I look forward to playing golf hopefully again next summer, and we'll make it a little bit more of a regular occurrence. Yeah,
and maybe the next time we team up, we can actually win.
Yeah, that wasn't all that pretty, was it? We ran into a bit of a buzzsaw, but it wasn't really a fair fight, though, was it? Putting us up against the pro.
We played pretty well and got creamed. That doesn't happen very often.
No, that's right, but it was still an enjoyable day. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me, TJ. I appreciate it, bud.